Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, it is never enough? You chase achievement, polish every detail, and yet a quiet voice inside tells you that you're failing, that you are flawed, that you are not whole. The world has trained you to measure yourself by invisible standards, to weigh your worth on perfection, and to punish yourself when you inevitably fall short. And the harder you strive to meet these impossible expectations, the more anxious, restless, and hollow you feel. You may even hide behind accomplishments, thinking they will shield you from judgment, but the truth is, the judgment you fear most comes from within. And yet, this common narrative is misleading. The notion that you must be flawless, that every action must be immaculate, that every thought must be right is not a law of the universe. It is a mirage created by fear and misunderstanding. Perfection is a story told to keep you small, to make you bend to rules that no one can fully define. What you think of as failure is not a flaw in your character. It is a signal, a call to see beyond the illusion that your value is conditional. The universe does not demand your perfection. It demands your presence, your willingness to engage fully with life, imperfect as it may be. There is a deeper truth waiting for you to discover. Your imperfection is not a weakness, it is the landscape of your freedom. Each misstep, each stumble, each moment of doubt or hesitation is not a mark against you. It is a brushstroke on the canvas of your real, alive human existence. When you stop punishing yourself for the inevitability of error, you unlock a space where curiosity, creativity, and courage can breathe. You begin to realize that the harsh self-criticism you carry is not discipline, but a chain, and every time you release it, you reclaim a fragment of your own life. So as you sit here listening, consider the possibility that everything you have told yourself about being less than is a story you can choose to stop telling. Imagine what it would be like to stop chasing a ghost of perfection and instead lean into the reality of your own experience. The relief, the clarity, the strength that come from allowing yourself to be human may surprise you. And if this reflection resonates, remember that by subscribing, sharing, or commenting, you help spread these ideas to others who may be trapped in the same invisible prison, so that they too can begin to breathe a little freer, just as you can. Before you began to question the need for perfection, your life may have felt like a continuous performance, a stage where every gesture, every word, every thought was measured against an invisible ruler. You walked through your days anticipating criticism, real or imagined, and tried desperately to anticipate the world's judgment, shaping yourself to meet standards that were never truly yours. In relationships, at work, in private moments, you felt the tension of constant calculation, as though a single misstep could unravel everything you had built. Even when you achieved something remarkable, the satisfaction was fleeting, replaced by a subtle, gnawing sense that it was never enough, that your value was always on loan, contingent upon flawless execution. Life in this state is exhausting, a quiet storm of anxiety, fear, and self-reproach, and yet most of the world insists that this is simply being responsible, striving for excellence or discipline, without recognizing the weight it places upon your spirit. But then something shifts. A moment arrives, sometimes quietly, sometimes with sudden force, where you begin to see that perfection is a myth, a story woven into your mind by old fears and societal pressures. You notice that the harsh self-punishment you carry is not truth. It is a habit, a ritual of control disguised as virtue. You start to recognize the pattern. The tighter you grip, the more fragile and constrained you feel. And when you begin to loosen your hold, to stop policing every thought and action, life does not collapse. The world does not fall apart. In fact, something unexpected happens. Your attention becomes lighter, your awareness sharper, and your energy, once spent on self-criticism, begins to flow into real experience. You feel the difference between existing for approval and existing fully for yourself. As this awakening deepens, you notice subtle changes in how others respond to you. People may first perceive it as aloofness, strange indifference, even arrogance, but beneath the surface, something more essential is emerging, a presence that is grounded, calm, and clear. The anxiety that once dictated your choices is replaced by freedom, the freedom to act, to speak, to move, without the oppressive weight of judgment. And paradoxically, by releasing the need to be perfect, your capacity to connect, to create, and to live authentically expands. What once seemed like weakness, the willingness to admit imperfection, is revealed as strength. What once felt like loss, the surrender of control, is revealed as liberation. In these moments, the contrast between before and after becomes unmistakable. The man who once measured his worth by perfection now feels the relief of being alive, the quiet joy of imperfection, the hidden power in being fully himself. Each day is no longer a trial, but a practice, not a test of endurance, but a journey into clarity and freedom. And as this new vision takes root, the cycles of fear, self-reproach, and endless striving gradually dissolve, leaving a man who stands apart not because he has withdrawn, but because he has awakened. Take a moment to look at the foundations of your life and notice how much of it was built on the silent agreements you never consciously made. You believed that success, approval, and admiration were the measures of your worth, and you structured every relationship, every choice around that belief. You sacrificed rest, intimacy, and joy to meet expectations that weren't even yours, convincing yourself that this struggle was noble, necessary, even virtuous. You conformed, you calculated, and you curated, thinking that the world's gaze was permanent and that any deviation would be catastrophic. And in the quiet of the night, when no one else was watching, the relentless self-criticism echoed louder than any external judgment, making every imperfection feel like a personal condemnation. But here is the subtle truth. These structures were illusions, held together by fear and habit rather than reality. Approval is fleeting, standards are arbitrary, and the chains you forged for yourself were never demanded by anyone but you. Once you begin to question these foundations, to see them for what they are, a strange kind of liberation arises. You start to notice the automatic thoughts, the harsh inner voice, the compulsive drive for flawlessness, and recognize that they do not define you. They are habits of mind, echoes of old conditioning, not mandates from the universe. And as you stop participating in these silent contracts, the tension begins to dissolve. The anxiety that once ruled your decisions no longer dictates the rhythm of your life. You find space to breathe, to choose, to act from clarity instead of compulsion. This deconstruction is not painless. There is a period where others may perceive you differently, perhaps even judge you more harshly, because the rules that once guided your behavior no longer apply. You appear strange, distant, even arrogant at times because you refuse to perform for approval. Yet inside, a profound honesty grows. You are no longer a shadow bending to invisible standards. You begin to inhabit a self that is authentic, present, and grounded. Your actions, your words, and even your silences carry weight not because they are perfect, but because they are true. In this quiet authenticity, you realize that the judgment you feared most, the judgment of imperfection, is a story you can finally stop telling yourself. And the effect of this revelation is both subtle and immense. Freed from the compulsion to be flawless, your mind becomes alive in ways it never was before. Mistakes are no longer crises but lessons. Failures are not evidence of inadequacy, but markers of engagement with life. Each imperfection becomes a doorway, a chance to experience depth, curiosity, and creativity. And as you continue this journey, what once felt like weakness, the willingness to be imperfect reveals itself as one of the strongest positions a man can inhabit. You are no longer punished by the world, nor by yourself. You are, in a very real sense, free. Think for a moment about failure. For most of your life, failure has been a shadow, a warning, a source of shame. It haunted your thoughts, defined your choices, and limited your actions. You avoided risk, hid errors, and clung to what was safe, thinking that perfection was protection. And yet, in truth, this obsession with avoiding mistakes kept you small. You measured every move against an impossible ideal, confusing repetition and control with mastery. You believed that only through flawlessness could you find respect, love, or significance. But this is a misreading of life itself. Failure is not a mark of inadequacy. It is evidence that you are alive, that you are engaged, that you are daring to exist fully in a world that cannot be tamed by the mind. The same goes for desire. We often interpret longing as weakness, an emptiness we must fill with achievement, validation, or perfection. We think that to want something is to admit deficiency, that to be drawn toward beauty, success, or love is to betray contentment. And yet, desire is not a flaw. It is a compass. It is the pulse of life itself, urging you to explore, to connect, to grow. When you are no longer bound by the chains of perfectionism, your desires no longer oppress you. They become invitations, not obligations, and you can pursue them with freedom and clarity, unafraid of judgment or inadequacy. What once felt like a weakness transforms into guidance, a vital signal of what matters to you and what resonates with your authentic self. Even power, a concept often misunderstood, shifts in meaning when you let go of perfection. You may have equated power with control, dominance, or flawless execution, believing that the perfect man commands respect through unerring competence. But true power is not perfection, it is presence. It is the calm certainty of someone who understands that imperfection is inherent to being human and who acts decisively, honestly, and without fear of judgment. When you stop punishing yourself, when you embrace your limitations and your flaws, you embody a power that others cannot easily perceive but instinctively respect. The power of a man who is whole, awake, and unafraid to be himself. And as these reinterpretations settle in, the world responds in subtle ways. Situations that once felt heavy or threatening become opportunities for engagement. Relationships deepen, not because you perform better, but because you show up fully. Challenges no longer trigger panic or avoidance. They become arenas to exercise your presence and your judgment. What once seemed like emptiness or inadequacy is revealed as space for growth and connection. The tension between appearance and essence shifts dramatically. What may look like weakness, hesitation, or imperfection to others is, in reality, the expression of clarity, freedom, and strength. You discover that the very things you feared, errors, desires, limitations, are the gateways to life fully lived. As you continue to release the relentless demand for perfection, the consequences begin to ripple through every corner of your life, often quietly at first, but with increasing intensity. On the surface, others may notice subtle changes, your detachment from endless comparison, your refusal to conform, the calm with which you approach situations that once provoked anxiety. They may call you strange, aloof, or even arrogant, because the old script, the one in which you performed tirelessly for approval, has been abandoned. Yet underneath this surface perception, something far more profound is taking root. You are discovering the unshakable stability that comes from living in alignment with yourself, unburdened by the need to prove or perform. This inner transformation is not loud. It is steady, persistent, and undeniable, like roots growing deep beneath the soil while the storm rages above. With each day, the effect expands. Decisions that once felt paralyzing become clearer, not because you have achieved mastery over everything, but because your mind is no longer clouded by fear of imperfection. You take action not to satisfy an external measure, but to engage authentically with life itself. Tasks you once dreaded, speaking honestly, showing vulnerability, admitting mistakes, become exercises in presence and integrity. You may stumble, you may falter, but each misstep is no longer a punishment. It is feedback, a signal that guides you, not condemns you. What seems like chaos or uncertainty on the outside is experienced internally as growth, clarity, and strength. Even your relationships begin to shift. People are drawn to the quiet authenticity you now embody, though it may initially provoke confusion or resistance. Some will resist because your freedom exposes the pressures they cling to. Others will be inspired, sensing in your imperfection a courage they themselves long to inhabit. And in the private moments, those once filled with self-recrimination, you feel an ease that was unimaginable before. The restless mind, the heavy heart, the compulsive need to measure up, all these begin to loosen, revealing the simple pleasure of being alive. The paradox becomes apparent. By relinquishing the quest for perfection, you gain a kind of mastery over your own life that perfection could never deliver. And as these layers accumulate, you notice a deeper transformation. Your priorities become clear, your energy more focused, your presence more potent. The constant inner punishment fades, leaving space for creativity, connection, and authentic joy. You are no longer scattered across endless possibilities of judgment and expectation. You inhabit your life fully, completely, with attention and intention. What once felt like weakness, acknowledging imperfection, letting go, slowing down, emerges as your greatest strength. What seemed like loss, the surrender of control, the relinquishing of impossible standards, becomes liberation. You realize, with a quiet wonder, that freedom has always been available. It was only hidden beneath the weight of self-punishment. As the release of perfection continues to settle into your life, the transformation moves beyond subtle shifts and becomes a living force that reshapes your very being. Each day no longer feels like a rehearsal for some impossible standard. Each action, each choice, each interaction is experienced in its raw, unfiltered reality. Where once your mind was a battlefield of doubt and judgment, it now becomes a landscape of clarity, where you can see the contours of life as they truly are. The compulsive need to measure, to compare, to critique yourself with merciless precision gradually dissolves, leaving a steadiness that was previously unimaginable. You begin to recognize that the essence of living is not to avoid mistakes, but to be fully present, fully engaged, fully human. In this presence, even the most ordinary moments acquire a richness and depth that perfection could never provide. Externally, the world continues to react, but in ways that reveal rather than control you. People may misinterpret your calm detachment as arrogance or indifference, and yet they cannot deny the gravity of someone who moves through life with authenticity and focus. This perception gap between how others see you and who you truly are becomes a source of quiet power. You no longer seek validation, yet your presence commands it naturally. The liberation from self-punishment creates space for connection, creativity, and discernment that was previously buried beneath anxiety and self-reproach. Where you once saw obstacles as threats to your image, you now see opportunities to engage with life on your own terms, without the weight of fear or the illusion of perfection dictating your choices. Internally, the consequences of this awakening unfold like layers of a vast horizon. Your thoughts, once cluttered with constant self-critique, now possess clarity and intentionality. Your desires are no longer shackled by guilt or comparison. They are alive with purpose, guiding you toward experiences and relationships that resonate with your authentic self. Mistakes are no longer evidence of inadequacy, but markers of learning, of courage, of engagement with the unpredictable rhythm of life. In this way, the very imperfections you once feared become the pathways to your deepest strengths. You begin to embody a paradox that the world rarely understands. By embracing your flaws, you achieve a form of mastery that perfection could never provide. Even more profoundly, this transformation reshapes the emotional landscape of your existence. Anxiety softens into alertness, fear into discernment, and self-reproach into compassionate self-understanding. You no longer punish yourself for failing to be perfect, because you understand that perfection is not the currency of a meaningful life. Presence, honesty, and engagement are. The man who emerges from this process is neither weak nor flawed in the sense that matters. He is alive, awake, and fully capable of responding to life with clarity, courage, and integrity. His relationships, his work, his inner life, all are transformed not by striving, but by the simple act of accepting reality as it is, including himself. And in the culmination of these changes, you begin to see the full cycle. The world that once seemed oppressive and demanding now feels like a mirror reflecting your own clarity. What once appeared as loss, the surrender of control, the relinquishing of impossible standards, reveals itself as liberation. What seemed like emptiness, the space left by imperfections, is actually the canvas upon which life paints its richest experiences. And what once felt like weakness, the willingness to exist imperfectly, is now the source of profound power. This is the essence of the transformation. By stopping the punishment, by allowing yourself to be human, you have entered a life of depth, freedom, and unshakable presence, a life that no measure of perfection could ever create. And now, standing at the edge of this realization, you see the truth in its full paradox. What once looked like isolation, the moments you feared exposing yourself, the solitude you blamed for your inadequacy, was actually clarity. What seemed like weakness, the willingness to embrace mistakes, to admit limits, to live without the armor of perfection, was actually power. What appeared as loss, the surrender of control, the relinquishing of endless striving, the letting go of impossible standards, was liberation. You discover that freedom has never been outside you. It has always been within, quietly waiting for you to release the self-imposed chains of judgment and expectation. You realize that the cost of truth, of being fully human and present, is not rejection, but completeness. The man who once feared imperfection now lives in harmony with it, awake to life, grounded and alive in ways that striving for flawlessness could never provide. The world continues around you, but it no longer dictates your sense of worth. Others may misinterpret your calm presence as indifference or distance, yet you understand that the essence of your being is intact, unshaken, and free. You act from a place of authenticity, not performance, and in this authenticity lies a subtle, undeniable power. Life does not demand perfection. It asks only that you show up fully, that you allow yourself to exist with honesty, courage, and grace. Each day, each interaction, each choice becomes a reflection of this truth, that imperfection is not a burden, but the source of your strength, not a failure, but the mark of your engagement with life. And as you reflect on this, consider the small but profound ways you can extend this understanding to others. By subscribing, sharing, or commenting, you do more than support a channel. You help create a space where these reflections reach men who, like you, have carried the heavy weight of perfection. Your voice, your experience, your willingness to see life clearly can ripple outward, reminding others that they too are human, that they too are enough. Comment your own experiences, your struggles, your moments of imperfection, and witness how the conversation grows, how awareness spreads, how liberation becomes shared. Remember, life is not about being perfect. It is about being alive, awake, and fully present in the chaos, the beauty, and the unpredictability of your own existence. The man who embraces imperfection is not diminished. He is whole. The journey from punishment to acceptance, from fear to clarity, from striving to presence, is the journey of life itself. And in this truth, you find your freedom, your power, your peace. There is no final flaw to correct, no standard to reach, only the unfolding experience of being alive, fully human, and deeply enough.